What I have found is that if you invest 10% of your net income per year, by the time you retire, you can become a millionaire. Let's run some numbers on this to prove it. Over the course of my life, I have come across many people who are wealthy, whether that be in school, work, or at events. And I have tried to identify habits which have made them successful. There are studies which show rich people think differently about money, and today we'll be sharing those findings. And the first difference is that rich people do not show off their wealth and look like normal people if you have to walk past them. The people who are truly wealthy are not trying to show off their fancy cars or their designer clothes or posting on social media about their recent trip overseas. Wealth is more about freedom to do what you like rather than being able to buy nice things. It's especially difficult to tell on social media on who is rich and who isn't. And often you will have influencers online posing next to a Lamborghini on how to make a certain amount of money within 3 to 6 months. And if you didn't know any better, you would most likely listen to him or her. The thing about the rich is that you can't tell who is rich and who isn't, because you can't see their bank balance. For all you know, that Lamborghini has been hired just for the day to shoot some content with the end goal of selling you a product. When you try to take advice from someone online regarding money, it is really tough because being rich isn't very visual. You cannot look at someone and say how well off they are. But on the other hand, if you want to gain some muscle, you can clearly see which person has muscles, and you would be more inclined to listen to them in order to gain more muscle. Whereas with money, it's not the same, unless of course that person is willing to show you their bank balance. Though one thing I have learned with people who have a lot of money is that they don't want you to know how much money they really have. There are not many upsides to sharing this information with everyone, and rich people know there are benefits to keeping a low profile. The first one is that you will not be a target for theft. If you wear regular jeans and a regular top, kinda like Mark Zuckerberg, and while driving a normal regular car versus someone who is wearing a designer clothing and driving a $200,000 car, chances are the person showing off is more likely than not going to be robbed over you. Now, this is very difficult for someone who does not have any money to do. Once they do have a large sum of money, it's very tempting for them to go out and splurge, as they do not want to be seen as being poor, as they have probably been seen as being poor their whole life. But this idea is very short-sighted approach in building wealth. This is one of the main reasons why most people who win the lottery end up using all their money within a couple of years and end up being broke once again. Point number 2 is that rich people know that it takes money to make money, which is why the rich save and invest it instead of spending it right away. Rich people understand leverage and know that capital scales well. Now, what that means is that the more money you have, the more money you make. Let me explain a little bit more in detail. If you are investing just $100 into the S&P 500, which yields on average an 8% return per year, you will get $8 back for the entire year. Now, there are many people around the world who would really value the $8. But for most of you watching here today will know that the $8 will not go a long way. Now, instead of investing $100, you invest $100,000 in the same S&P 500 index fund, yielding a return of 8% for the year, and you will end up making $8,000, significantly more than the $8. In both scenarios, you are investing into the same investment with the same returns, but the money earned is a lot higher when investing with more capital. This is why there is such a focus with rich people on saving and investing their money instead of spending it on unnecessary expensive items such as designer clothing. People who are wealthy know that if they are able to get a savings amount to 5, 6, or 7 digits, the compounding will take over and they will have to worry about money much less. When you are poor and trying to make your first $10,000, an emergency incident of $5,000 can set back your net worth to half or 50% of what it is right now. Whereas if your net worth is $100,000, a $5,000 emergency cost will only set you back 5% of your net worth. The point of all of this is that if your net worth isn't at the 6 six-figure value, then you should be trying your best to let your money make you more money by saving and investing a large chunk of your monthly income, and this can only be done with cutting down on unnecessary expenses. And that brings us on to point number 3, which is rich people understand the power of delayed gratification. They know that resisting temptation today will yield more for them in the future. A dollar you spend today can be worth a lot more in the future. In fact, it can be worth over $30 by the time you retire. Have a look at this image where it calculates the value of $1 over 45 years, which can be worth over $30 with a fixed interest rate of 8% per year compounded yearly and not monthly. So think twice before you head to Starbucks and buy your next $5 cup of coffee. And delayed gratification is one of the key reasons why it can make you really rich later on in life. You have to give up on things now to have a much better life later. The fourth difference between rich and poor people, which I have noticed, is that rich people love to invest into assets. Poor people tend to leave their money in a savings account and not really trust the financial system. An asset is something where you expect the value of the products to go up in value, such as properties. Have a look at this image where it shows you the assets held by people with different net worths. Notice how someone who has a net worth of $10,000 has a bigger portion of their net worth on a vehicle and gets smaller as your net value increases. While cars are assets, most of them are depreciating assets, meaning it goes down in value. You'll also notice that business interests tend to go higher as your net value gets closer and closer to the $1 billion mark. Real estate also tends to increase, which can bring you some income. This is the general trend. As you become wealthier, you tend to only invest into assets that bring an increase in value or bring you some sort of income. The fifth difference between the poor and rich is that rich people understand the importance of money management. Rich people know where their money is going at all times and how much of their money is being spent on what as a percentage. This does not necessarily mean that you need to know how much you are spending on what item to the dollar amount, but they know how much money they are earning, how much in total they are spending, and how much they end up saving on a monthly basis. Rich people never overspend, and with social media around, they are not influenced by anyone online, as you never really know if that person bought their things with their cash or are in a lot of debt. There's been a survey done by Credit Karma where they found that 38% of millennials and Gen Zs have been influenced by social media to spend the money that they don't have on traveling. And nearly 40% of millennials and Gen Zs, regardless of where their finances stand, will prioritize a summer travel holiday. With this said, if you think you can manage your money with a good plan, you can change the financial trajectory of your life. A good money management rule to follow is the 60-30-10 rule, where you spend 60% of your net income on your needs such as rent and groceries, 30% of your net income on your wants such as your Netflix subscriptions and new sneakers, and 10% on savings and investing. What I have found is that if you invest 10% of your net income per year, by the time you retire, you can become a millionaire. Let's run some numbers on this to prove it. Assume that you have a net income of $35,000, so after tax, if you invest $3,500 per year into the S&P 500 index fund, which in its history has an average return of 10% per year, and if we adjust that return to 8% so that tax is taken into account, now let's assume you invest $3,500 for 40 years, starting at the age of 25 till the age of 65. You would return just under $1 million by the time you retire. And once you take any increases to your salary into account and invest that proportionally to the 10% savings, you will easily get to the $1 million mark by the time you retire if your salary is within the range that I just mentioned. Having interest in your money and trying to grow is critical to money management, which is the next key factor to becoming rich. Number 6 on this list is that the rich people have excellent credit and they know how to leverage it. In order to get credit, you are ensuring that you are paying back the minimal amount required every single month, which fits together with point number 4, which was money management. In order to have a good credit score, you need to ensure that you pay the minimum amount back and not be late on your payment. If you pay back your credit too late, that will will hurt your credit score and impact how much, if any, credit you would ever get again. I always thought that having a credit score of 90% or more would be considered great, but that's actually not the case. If you have a credit score of less than 97%, it is considered poor. You need to ensure that your rating is 99% or higher in order to have a good credit score. This is important as the higher your credit score, the less interest you'd be charged on your mortgage, for example. Let's use that as an example. The first scenario is that if you have an excellent credit score and if you get a home loan with a credit interest rate of 5.5%. The second scenario is that if you have a credit score of 97%, which is considered poor, you may get a home loan with an interest rate of 6%. By looking at that, you may think that it's not a big deal, but a 0.5% difference on a home loan of $400,000 can set you back around $30,000. So if you don't have a good credit score, this will be a good enough reason to want to improve upon it. And the final step is that rich people continue to educate themselves throughout their lives, whether that be reading books, listening to podcasts, or continuing studying in a college. By continually learning, you will continually come across opportunities in life simply because you know more about things. In my opinion, the more you learn, the more you grow, and that's something you should never stop. Well, there you have it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, then please consider liking and subscribing to my channel.